Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. Let's be honest, we've all been a bit of a dumpster fire. So, guys, we have an amazing episode planned for you today. Our guest has the most charismatic energy, I think, of the season. And that's saying something because we've had some heavy hitters. Welcome to the show, Violet. Violet, how are you this afternoon or evening? Where are you at? I should ask that.
I'm in Colorado. It's like early evening here, and that was very kind of you to say. And I'm doing great. I'm super excited to connect. I loved your vibes from our messaging, and I'm just curious to see where the conversation goes. And hopefully, there'll be something that resonates with someone listening.
Listen, I'm the biggest believer in down the rabbit hole because you really never know what's going to come next. So, can you tell me a little bit about you before we get too far into today's episode?
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start. Like, we all have interesting life stories or cringeworthy moments or, random things that led us to where we are. I think the most random is I had a dream about my now husband before I actually met him in real life, which sounds like really woo woo, but it's true. I was dating someone else really casually, and that person was really sarcastic. And I was like, like my heart is hurting, even though they're perfect on paper. I was like, what should I do? Should I stop seeing them or not? And then I had a dream, and this guy walked up to me in my dream and put his hand on my heart and said, Joe, that was the name of the guy I was dating. Joe's a 10 and you're a 100. Why are you with this guy? And I woke up laughing. I was like, okay, universe, I got the message. That's a little ridiculous, but okay. And I didn't think it was an actual person. And then 3 weeks later at a meetup, I was like, said to the girl next to me who I didn't know, I was like, holy shit, that's a guy from my dream. And she was like, okay. So anyway, but the rest is history.
I've heard of man of my dreams, but never guy from my dreams. The universe is super wonky. Do you think you manifested your husband, or do you think the universe just wanted to drop you off a little gift?
I think both of those are true, actually. I think I was at a point in my life where I was open and had been humbled by dating. Like, dating had not been going well for me. I used to joke, I'm like, I can get a date, but I can't get a relationship to save my life. Like, I don't know what is going on here. I was on this like 3 week spin cycle where I would get to know someone, and within 3 weeks, it would be just combust. It was just done, despite my best efforts. So, like, I think I was just in a place of being really open and had let go of my list, of like the things. Not that my husband isn't amazing and doesn't fulfill, my list, but yeah. So I do think it was mainly the universe wanting to bring us together. And then also the fact that I was ready. Isn't there like some quote, I'm going to mess it up, but about like his mainly preparation or something, or
I don't think I've heard that one.
being open to an opportunity. Yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, if you say it, it then becomes a saying. But I think by definition, by technicality.
Yes.
I was like, no, I didn't mess that up. I said exactly what I wanted to say.
How about for you? Like, do you think that our choices are kind of mapped out for us, or do you think we create our life, or somewhere in between?
It's so funny. So I used to teach summer camp, and kids are a fever dream in a sense, especially like super young kids. I worked with like kindergarten to second graders. And I think this was really profound, and I don't think he understood what he said at the time. But he was like, Mr. Josh, he's like, is life kind of like a Mad Lib? There are rules and like a little bit of structure, but then we get to just put in whatever we want at certain spots. And I was like, actually, I think life is kind of like a Mad Lib. We're doing all this talking, or we like have these big ideas, we make these actions, we make these choices, not knowing sometimes any of the context around it or what's going to come next. So I think that's kind of my life philosophy right there.
That is profound. I love that. It's so true. Like, we have our own little window, so we can't see all the things going out. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's like that TikTok trend where you have like two people, but they can't see each other, and they're like, use a phone or do something like that. We have our own perception, but it's crazy how somebody who we could have grown up with or is in the same environment as we do has a completely different perception, and we're both living the same life in an aspect. I was like, you're living your life, I'm living mine, but how we interact, so different.
I always wonder, like, siblings from the same house, but they can take really different paths, or same family, same, dysfunction. And yet one person has a different response to it or takes it in a different direction. And yeah.
No, I definitely get that. This has been really big lately, and communication is key. And I don't think, even though I knew it was important, I didn't know how big of a thing it was until maybe like 2 weeks ago, because I have what I call Amelia Bedelia syndrome, and I'm quite literal. Whatever I say is literally what I mean. But I was talking to a friend of mine, and like as I'm saying words, it's not like she's not listening because she hears what I say. But I was like, that's not what I said at all, like whatsoever. And she's like, yeah, yeah, I know. And I was like, no. I was like, repeat back what I said. And then it's something completely different. I was like, that's no. I was like, no. Is there a filter on my mouth sort of for whatever like I say that comes out then gets transposed into the words that you hear? And it's so funny because I think a lot of the issues we have just as people kind of stem from that. We have these filters on our ear that change wording around, and especially in relationships. It's always love, but sometimes there's like I said, there's just that like misfire. I don't know what it is.
Hmm. I totally relate to that. I think for me, it's like I'm always interpreting my partner's words or actions through my own little frame, which is
Yeah.
heavily influenced, right, by like my self-talk and my upbringing and all of those things. And we did this exercise. It's from this book called 5 Minute Relationship Repair, but where you basically say to the partner the words you want to hear that are reassuring. Like, if you say this sentence to me, it's reassuring. And it sounds really cheesy because you think, well, I know that you're saying a sentence I asked you to say, so like it's not going to land, but it really lands. And it was funny how the sentence he wanted to hear was, your happiness is very important to me. And I kind of scoffed at that. I was like, yeah, of course it is. Like, that's crazy, you know? And mine was the one that I wanted to hear was something around like, you're not invisible. Like, I see you. And he's like, yeah, of course you're not invisible. Like, I see you however many times a day. So, where I'm going with this is, I think it's funny how sometimes what we think we hear in another person's words is what we've been conditioned to assume about other people. And we then sometimes discount what other people say because it's not like our core need. So therefore, like it doesn't matter as much. We're just kind of like walking around very self absorbed in our own ways that we communicate. And then it becomes kind of comical because yeah, like if we're all doing that to each other, it's not just like, well, your friend did that, but you're a saint. I mean, maybe you are a saint, but like it's it's just they're like, okay, well, this is just all kind of fucked up and we just do our best. Yeah.
It's the hardest thing for people to realize that you could love somebody and they could be so important to you. I forget where I first heard this at, but we can only be the main character of our story. As important as you are to me, all the events that I see, my perspective, my thought process, my actions start from within. So yeah, I was like, I am a little bit self-centered simply because I have like it starts with me. I was like, you could be a reoccurring character and you could be in every other page of my book or like every chapter, but it's still my book. And that's not a bad thing. I don't think. I think it's great that you should put yourself first and be the best and healthiest version of you. That way you can be a great partner, parent, or whatever the relationship is that you're a part of. But I think we all can do maybe a little better job of supporting the other characters throughout our stories. So that's the era I'm in right now is I'm trying to support my characters, not just have them pop in and out.
Hmm. That's a beautiful metaphor. I love that. And the intentionality of like extending yourself to support, but coming from a place of feeling full and resourced and connected to your own plot line or whatever.
No, it's really a big thing. I have this saying that I'm a good person. I'm not always a nice person because I think I have a solid set of morals. But sometimes I'm a bit selfish, or sometimes it's not that I don't think about other, like, I know other people exist, but we have so much plot going on right now. The outside world just isn't real. I mean, if you think about the relationships with your family, growing up, your mom or your dad or your siblings were such a huge part of your life, but now, how often do you talk to those people or see them? I was like, they don't come back up in the story as often. And so once I realized that, I think it was a TikTok or an Instagram reel I saw that said by the time you're 19, you've spent 70% of the time that you'll spend with your parents in your life. That's kind of heartbreaking. It made me realize that like we have to start branching out of our perspective in a story, in our story.
Yes. I mean, I hear that and I hear it is heartbreaking and it's also liberating or freeing at the same time to be like, wow, now all of this time that I've been spending with these characters, it's like a whole new, like you said, era or part of the book. But I think that can also be overwhelming because there's so much information out there and there's not always like the guidance that we're looking for. I think we can find it from ourselves and from spiritual practices and mentors and all that. But yeah, I'm really curious about like these liminal spaces or these transition points. You know, you mentioned like 19 and then you kind of go onward and I just became a mom again like 7 months ago. I have a small baby and that feels like that's changed my life. And it's interesting to me how different things, I mean, I also just think about all the political things happening that are changing people's lives drastically, you know, like where they live and how connected they are to their family and all of that. And it's just like, wow, so much, so many transitions happening.
It's so funny to me because I try to stay really neutral on the show, and but the world is a fever dream right now, guys. I can't be the only one who just thinks that this really has to be a fever dream. Like there's so much going on. It's not on my bingo card. I don't think anybody could have written it besides maybe The Simpsons because they have this weird mystery secret power of predicting these things. It's like somebody like this has to be like there are hidden cameras all around. Like this has to be like just a massive episode of Punked or something. It does. It just keeps getting scarier. I didn't think that my life would be a thriller, but that's what it's shaping up to be.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is kind of like what you were saying earlier about the Mad Libs. Like, is this all just a virtual reality experiment? And
Mm-hmm.
how much of this can we affect? I think you can zoom out to the macro and be like, okay, like crazy shit is happening. And then you can drill down to the personal and be like, wow, like that's fucked up or that's hard or that's joyful. Like sometimes there's
Right.
like I'm feeling great and like okay, and there's also other stuff going on, but I can still, like you said, be the main character in my life. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about that other than it's wild. And I do think we need to be able to zoom out and pop in and like do both.
Yeah, because if you stay in one or the other too long, you either become crazed or deranged. You know, when you are the only thing in your scope, that leads you to be a little self-centered. But when you are too worried about any and every minuscule thing of life, it passed you by, and you can only control so much.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of passing you by, I think a lot of people in this day and age are afraid that love or a potential partner is going to pass them by. So you kind of work in that space of relationship building, matchmaking, like just fostering love and healthy relationships. So, what are some of the biggest things you notice that keep people from discovering those possibilities?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking that. I think that even though we can meet people in quotations easier than ever because of the apps, it can be a distraction from actually like living our life and going out and meeting people in real life, whether that's at a meetup event or a dance class or, you know, whatever. Like there's a lot of different ways to meet people in real life. And it's okay to use the apps too. But we've been fed, I believe, a lot of bullshit about love. Like, okay, we've been fed a lot of bullshit about love because we get told, like, there's just one person, or like, you know, don't settle down too fast. Like, there's all these mixed messages. And I believe that there's more than one person who can make us happy in the world. There's no way that there would be billions of people and we're only destined to be with like one particular person. But I do think there's maybe a range of like personalities or like values that people will vibe with. There's only just one, you know, keeps us in the perfectionist, like, oh, that person can't be that person because they're whatever, you know, they didn't pay for my coffee on the first date or whatever. Like we have these rules and these expectations, and then we can hide behind those of like, they're not the one. But on the other hand, the other kind of myth that we get sold is, oh yeah, take your time, like don't settle down, don't rush into anything, like you got to make sure you have fun while you can. And then we think that there's always going to be more people and that they're like we can just, the grass is greener. And that's where the apps, I'm kind of going with this, is the apps can kind of trick our mind into thinking, into comparing and like really getting in our mind. And what I
Right.
help people with is integrate their head, their heart, and their body. So it's not just like swiping, swiping, swiping. You're just kind of numbing out. And it's not just like a list or perfectionist. It's like, how do I feel with this person? Do I feel relaxed? Do I feel excited? Do I feel comfortable to be myself and to be vulnerable? So that's like the heart space. And
Right.
if I am vulnerable, do they like mock me or dismiss me? Because that's not good. And then how do I feel in my body? Like, am I just going for a physical attraction? Or am I sensing that there's more than just the physical chemistry? And is my body giving me any signals of like, oh, this feels familiar. Like this might be an old pattern that I'm reenacting.
It's so interesting that you say that because I think that's actually a really old philosophy. Like, I think maybe Plato or Aristotle also thought that the body was divided into three parts: the mind of logic, the heart of like empathy, and the physical. So that's a common kind of ideology that I think has been lost. That is important that we do start bringing it back around because you really can't have a functional relationship without all three of them. As much as we want to say attraction doesn't matter as long as like they have a great personality, but it does. Vice versa, that somebody who could be societally the most gorgeous person in the world, if you don't have anything in common and you can't hold a conversation, that will also cause you to lose interest. If you feel like your partner isn't connecting with you or doesn't have you at the forefront, you're not forming that emotional bond. That emotional bond can break. I mean, it's really hard to repair sometimes. So all three of those things working in concert is super important. So I'm glad that you take that approach when you are working with people. Now, do you mainly work with men, women, couples?
Yeah, it started out mainly working with women. I take that back actually. So when I very first started out as a coach, I was doing more business coaching, and
Okay.
that's my background. And it happened to be that I was working with more men. And after just a few months of working together on their businesses, they'd be like, so for real though, can we actually talk about my personal life on this session? Because I have a question about this girl that I'm dating. Or like, it would just naturally go to that. I think it's because they knew that I was secretly like really into that stuff. Also having a really hard time with that part of my life, trying to figure it out, had taken some like whatever trainings and workshops. And when it started happening like clockwork that all my clients are asking me about their personal life, I was like, maybe I need to look into this more. So then I took a training on love and dating and intimacy and relationships and all of that. And at one point I just ripped off the band-aid. I was like, I'm a love coach, even though that sounds like so airy fairy. It's my passion and it's my life path. And so this is what I'm doing. So I was first working with a lot of men, and then when I started doing love coaching, it was mainly women. And then there was a while where I was very clear as like, I help women, and it was just women. But, like we were talking about the universe. So I've had male clients find me through referrals, through their female friends. My husband does a lot of work with men, and some of his clients will be like, this is cool and you've helped me a lot, and like I kind of want a female perspective, and Violet brings in more spirituality and I want to try that, or whatever their reasoning is. And then my husband and I, we waited to work with couples for a while because we wanted to feel like we had something to offer and we weren't just like, brand new in our relationship. And we've gone through a lot of ups and downs. So I'm really proud of what we've created. And so we started working with couples, I mean, off and on, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, but more consistently, like in just the last year or two.
That's really big. So you're both coaches?
Yes.
I mean, it's like a family business. Even though it's not always side by side, I imagine you like all have you both have your own set of like clients. So from time to time, you probably refer each other, or refer each other to your clients. So I think that's like really cool that you could build a system like that. I know a couple who actually coach together, like at the same time, like they have the same clients, and I was like, that to me is really interesting because are you always on the same page? And then if you're always working together, then you are living together. When do you have you time? Because identity is such a fickle thing. It can be so strong, but you can get lost in it so easily.
Yeah, that's so wise. I do think it's easy to merge with our partner, with our businesses, with all of that. From the beginning, my husband and I, when we first started dating, we talked about a few different things that felt important to each of us. And one of the things that he talked about was having time every year to like go off with his friends or do a professional training or like just basically following his own passion. I feel that way about travel. I love to travel and I don't ever want to be held back by like someone else's schedule. It's not like I'm a diva about it, but for instance, when we started dating, we've been dating maybe like 4 months, and I've always wanted to go to Japan to see the cherry blossoms. And I was like, this is weird, but I booked a ticket in 2 weeks to go to Japan for 10 days. Like, I want to do this. And he was like, yeah, you do you. Like, that's great. So we kind of from the very beginning have honored that we will have our own interests and friends and lives outside of just the relationship. And when it comes to work, I think we both enjoy the fact that we have our own stuff. And we also have couple sessions where we're working with a couple. So it feels like a good blend right now. But I would actually like to do even more work together. Like, that's a desire of mine. But I think we have to go into it really intentionally. Yeah.
It makes sense that things seem like a good idea, and sometimes we're really impulsive and we'll just like, this is a good idea, I'm going to do it, without actually thinking, okay, what does this look like? Whether it's moving in with the person or starting a new job, trying to start your own business. If there's not a semi solid plan behind it, I don't know how reliable it'll be, or how long it can last. So I love that you're taking the baby steps. Okay, yeah, we want to do this. Let's try it out. It's kind of working. What is this going to look like long term? Because, like I said, I think that won't just be great for your business. I think it'll probably help your personal life as well. You know, I'm sure you both are really good at communicating. There we go, talking about communication again. You both are really good at communicating, but when you have defined roles and like set goals, I think that's great in a relationship, especially if you are. So if you're like a bachelor, bachelorette out there watching the show, dating is hard, like you said it at the beginning, and boy, can it wear you out. But I think one of the hardest things about dating is that we don't always communicate what's important. We expect each other to be mind readers and be like, well, I didn't say this, but this is really how I felt, or this is what I wanted. And I was like, how was I supposed to know that? You don't come with a manual. If you do, it wasn't in the box. You weren't factory reset when I got you. So when you are working with clients, what are some of the things that you kind of do or suggest to help them? I kind of said this earlier, but just open up and get ready for love.
Yeah, part of it is being willing to be vulnerable and express what you need and how you feel. To your point, I think we keep that to ourselves because we're like, I don't want to scare them off if I tell them that I, want to travel 50% of the time. And what if they can't because of their job? Or I want to scare them off if I tell them I want a relationship and they want something casual. Or I can't tell them I'm pissed that they were 20 minutes late. Like, I need to just let that shit go. Like, we filter so much of our expression because we're afraid. At least that's what I find with a lot of my clients. Or we maybe communicate really intensely and don't maybe take a pause to think about what we want to say before it just comes out. There's like a middle ground. But most of my clients, they're working on vulnerability and how to feel really good about what they want and say that from a place of confidence. So it's really simple, but there's a phrase, I feel, Mad Lib, insert the blank. I want Mad Lib, insert the blank. I'm like, if that's all that you do in your dating life, you are winning. Because if you're continually sharing, this is how I feel and this is what I want, like, hey, I feel bummed that you were 20 minutes late. And like, I want to trust that you'll show up when we say, because like my time's valuable, so is your time, like, or whatever it is. Or hey, I actually want to be a mom and have kids. And I feel a little nervous saying that because I'm afraid that you're going to think I'm like pressuring you. And it doesn't even have to be with you. This is a dream of mine. This is something I want. So that's a big part of the communication piece that I teach my clients. And then also getting ready to date, like understanding body language. And sometimes we're just on our phone all the time and we're collapsing our shoulders. And what does it feel like to kind of, take a breath? And I do that too. I'm not like perfect. Yeah, open your heart, take a breath, look around you. I always talk to my clients about notice your five senses. Like, let's say you go out I don't care if it's the grocery store or to dinner, and you just want to be on your phone or have your headphones in, your AirPods, whatever. What if you put those things down and you're just like, oh, like, what am I smelling? What am I tasting? What am I noticing? Even at the grocery store, you can be like, like, let me actually take a moment to like feel into what coffee I want, or be present in the moment and in the surroundings. Because if we're not present, then we're not really that open. And if someone can't feel us, they can't find us. Like, they have to feel us before they can really find a way to connect with us, in my experience. So let's make it easy for people to find us by feeling ourselves and feeling our environment and being vulnerable.
Appreciate that. And I think that is a really big key, not just in romantic relationships, but platonic and familiar relationships as well, is it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to communicate your needs to those people, because hopefully they want you to feel fulfilled and they want to support you in whatever way they can. So if it's your best friend, like, hey, I get we are all busy and you have a life, but can you respect my time? Like, you were 20 minutes late, like habitually, like, having that conversation, I think that's great. That's healthy. If this is somebody who you're interested in romantically and you just want to reassure them that, like, I see you, like, I don't take the little things you do for granted. Those little moments become monumental when they're done consistently, and they really help increase the longevity, I think, of those relationships and the connection. Because there are people who in my life where, like I said, I haven't done the best job of supporting them in my story, but there are also people who I make a really big effort to get them a lot of screen time, so to speak. And just those two relationships are like night and day different. And I know, like, the person who I am investing in and supporting is doing the same for me. They'll, if I call, they'll pick up. But the person that you don't always nourish, have the best relationship with, I don't know if I can say the same. I might have to call 2, 3, or 7 times before they actually pick up and be like, oh, I'm busy. Okay, sorry to bother you. No, those are like really big things. So I'm glad that you brought those to our attention. Now, if a guy who's, let's say he's an upstanding guy, pretty okay, good head on his shoulders, decent, good heart. If he wanted to find love or was looking for a great woman, like one of the clients that you work with, what should he be doing to not just be open, but to find that person?
Two things. One, which is a little bit the chicken before the egg, but is asking good questions. Women do really want good conversation. I know this is a blanket statement. It's not that men don't also want that, but I can't tell you how many men on the apps will say things like, hi, beautiful. How's your day? Nothing substantial. It's like, did you read my profile? Do you want to ask me anything about my profile? Or in real life, if you are connecting with someone at a party or an event or something, even something simple like, what inspired you to come to this? Or what do you like so far about the event? Or what's the best part of your weekend so far? Like, kind of a positive, like, supportive question. Women really connect to that. So that's kind of approaching dating from that perspective of being curious and asking good questions, following your curiosity and staying in your heart. And then when it comes to finding a partner, as you can probably tell from what I've shared on this episode, I think it's important to meet people in real life. It does not mean that all my clients meet someone in real life. Half my clients meet on the apps, half my clients meet in person. But if you're only using the apps, you can kind of get a little rusty with conversational skills and even feeling just confident and comfortable being vulnerable and all of that. So when you do things in real life, I would say don't just go somewhere because you want to, in quotations, like, pick up chicks or meet someone. I'm not like the biggest fan of single events. It's nice because everyone there's single. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, like, what if I flirt and hit on her and turns out she has a partner. So like, I get that it's relieving to not have to worry about that aspect of it. But I think do things that would light you up, do things that you're naturally curious about, do things where your friends or some people are already going, but also do things on your own. And that takes a lot of courage sometimes to, like I said, go out to dinner, sit at the bar at the restaurant, don't use your phone. Just like chat people up and, see what sort of connections you make, because you might not meet a girlfriend there or a partner there, but you might meet someone cool who tells you about an event or a party or something else, or live music happening down the street later that night. Like just staying open and continuing to make connections and following what are the types of things that you want to do. Yeah, that would be my advice.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I went to a singles event last night. I just happened to like find it, and I was like, I think this might be the first one I went to ever. I think I've hosted like a speed dating thing, but I've never been a guest at one. And it really is, it's a time, because you don't have to worry as much. I actually ran into like not a third, but a nice handful of people weren't actually single there. They either, I don't know if this was genius or it kind of defeats the purpose. So I was like talking to a couple people and I was like, you guys have really great chemistry. Did you just met or, like you're hitting up? They're like, oh no, we're friends. Like we came to a singles event as a group. And I was like, is that, I was like, I don't know how I felt about it. I was like, is that a good idea? You're comfortable because you have your friend with you, but are you really taking chances because you have your friend with you? Because I ran into somebody I knew there and she's like, I like this guy, but she had her friends with her. I literally brought the guy to her. Like I was like, hey, my friend's kind of interested, yada, yada. I will talk to this young lady if you go talk to her. And then they talked for like 5-10 minutes. I was like, oh, it's going well. She was like, oh no, I told him I was here with my friend. And I was like, what are we doing? I was like, I thought we were trying to make new connections. Or there were people who were like, oh no, I'm just a cheerleader. And I was like, what does that mean? It's like my friend's here and I didn't want them to be nervous. Or if he got his heart broken, I could just cheer him up. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't think that's how this is supposed to work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's how it's supposed to work either. I am laughing though, because I did go to a speed dating event with one of my clients because she was feeling really nervous. So I was totally that girl, from your story. But I think part of the reason that we get nervous or we feel like we need a cheerleader or we have to go with friends is because we just haven't developed that social muscle to go out on our own. And that's why it is just a muscle you have to build. And you can start small. You can go to a coffee shop by yourself and not be on your phone, and then work your way up to like a full dinner or going to a meetup event or something like that. Yeah.
So this is a question that I got asked the other day, and I don't act like I'm a coach who knows everything and I have all the answers or a quick fix to anything. I have a few female clients, and she had asked me, she was like, I feel like I make all these really good connections and I do well. Like I go on dates, but they're not really lasting, or like kind of you with like the 3-week thing. And she was like, how do I know if they are actually connecting with me or they just know what to say? And I was like, that's a great question that I've never really put a lot of thought into. So have you ever come across that before?
Yes. First of all, I also do not know all the answers and don't have a quick fix to anything. So I think that's not possible because every person is, you know, figuring their own life out and
Right.
helping people. But just to bust any myth, like no one is going to be able to tell you exactly what to do in your life. You have to also develop that inner insight. But it is nice to have shows like this where you can get inspiration and guidance. I think there's a lot more people nowadays who know the lingo and know what to say because of TikTok and because of now everyone knows what narcissism is. Maybe 10 years people are like, what? So it's good that there's so much more information. It's good that people know the language, but the downside of that is that then people can fake it. And I always say there's a few milestones in relationship. Like the first 3 weeks, you're getting to know the person and are they legit? Do you feel good around them? Do you want to keep seeing them? I mean, my problem with my 3 week, spin cycle was that I was feeling kind of desperate. Like, I want to be in a relationship and why isn't it working? So I was minimizing myself and my needs. I was just trying to fit into whoever I thought they wanted me to be. So I was saying probably what I thought the men wanted to hear. And that didn't go well for me. So for your client, sorry, who's wondering, how do I know if a guy is serious or not, or just saying things? Some of it is just that time will tell. I know you don't want to hear that, but some of it is just how does this person show up consistently over time? The other thing that I think you can look for is, do they ask follow-up questions? If they're like, "Oh, what are you looking for in a partner?" And then you share and they're just like, "Cool, I am that," or "I can do that," or "I love that." And then it just stays there.
Right.
Then to me, they don't feel like that invested. So are they asking follow-up questions? Are you asking follow-up questions? If you show a not so nice emotion, nice in quotation, so if you show like anger, disappointment, sadness, do they bounce? Are they like, oh, shit's getting real and I'm not interested anymore? Or are they still, there for you? So if you say, yeah, I'm feeling frustrated by whatever, my boss, or I'm frustrated by something even in our dynamic, and they can't handle it, then that tells me, okay, like maybe they're faking it till they make it and it doesn't feel quite as genuine. You also learn a lot about someone when you ask about their past relationships, which I do not recommend doing on like the first few dates. Do not do that. But at some point when you're getting to know someone, like after that 3-week mark and you're curious, how they talk about their ex is really big, right? If they're like, oh, this ex was horrible and that ex was horrible and this and that, like you can kind of see the lens by which they view women or by they view relationships. So I have a little framework that I say, which is like the first few dates are about the present. Like, do you like spending time with each other in the present moment? The next few dates are about the future. What's your vision for your life? And like, what are cool things you want to create? And yeah, like, what do you see your life looking like and however long? It doesn't have to sound like an interview, but you just want to make sure someone has similar vision, similar values. And then the next handful of dates is kind of like, okay, what's been hard for you? Like, what are some challenges you've been through? Why did your last relationships not work out? Again, not an interview, but you just want to know like, this person has character that they've developed over time by working through adversity and by learning from their past relationships. So I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I think it's a healthy place to be sometimes because people are really curious and they want to know because they want the happily ever after, whatever that looks like. It's not cookie cutter for everybody, but I think everybody still kind of wants it in some way, shape, or form. I think it's funny, like on TikTok for a while, everybody like talked about the angel shot, but I was like, well, like you have to come up with a new term now because everybody knows it. So like if you say it, like everybody's aware of it. I was like, it's no longer secretive or like they're like, oh, this I found this hidden gem. It's not a hidden gem anymore if everybody knows it. But some things don't need to be hidden gems. They can just be gems, like great dating advice. That shouldn't be a secret, And I agree. I love how you kind of like break up the handful of dates because I feel like so many people try to compress that into like the first 3 or 4 dates. They go from date 1, do I like them? Date 2, 3, 4, all the super heavy dense stuff. And then both sides, both men and women are like, it's too heavy, too fast, or you haven't really had time to build anything. So it's like, okay, where do we go from here? I know all your goals, all your dreams, but we still don't really know each other that well because it's only been 3 dates,
Yeah, there's like this false intimacy that happens where we learn so much so fast. And then there can be a bit of a recoil of like, whoa, okay, that was intense. And now what do I do with all this? And I think it's important to have, like you talked about your friends, have friends that you can develop relationships with. So not all of your, longings and unfulfilled desires have to go into your dating life or your romantic life. And sometimes I work with people one on one, sometimes I work with them in groups, sometimes online, sometimes in person. But I think it's nice to have, again, whether it's like a meetup event or parties or whatever, things to do in person so you can regulate your nervous system. When we're in a group of people, we show up differently than when we're just one on one, and we can't funnel all of that into one on one relationships. And I think it's nice to have a coach. It's also nice to do, or a therapist, whatever your jam is. It's also nice to do work like in a group online or in person, because then you're learning not just from the teacher, but you're learning from other people there. And you have avenues for support. So when you're feeling anxious because you're like, he hasn't texted me back in like a day and a half, what the fuck? Then you can go and bring that to your friends or your fellow travelers on the path that are learning how to date better. And they'll help talk you down from the ledge or help you say something to that, text something like, hey, I haven't heard from you. Like, just, curious what's up. If it has anything to do with me, I'd always want to know. If not, cool. Like, so you can have a more balanced approach versus like, where have you been?
No, 100%. Like sometimes we're really intense because even with emojis, you can't convey 100% of tone through text. I think having a nuance in your messaging really can make a difference to be like, okay, I don't feel pressured to respond, or I don't feel attacked, or it's not a big accusation. It seems genuine and I can still respond to it in my own time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I just want to pop in something that was so transformational for me when I heard it, which was 16 years ago or something. But this woman was talking, I was in grad school, and this woman was talking about her relationship just on the side. And she said, I've been married now for like 10 plus years. And I was like, what's the secret? She's like, I just always assume positive intent. I was like, you can assume that positive intent for most of the people that you're interacting with, including your partner. She's like, yeah, it just works really well. It's like I had for most of my life assumed negative intent, like they're not that interested, they're just player, or like I had all this weird stuff in my head that was keeping me from actually feeling like the goodness of the people I was engaging with.
It's so funny that you say that because I'm probably one of those people who I just have positive intent.
That's amazing.
But I didn't realize you have to tell people that because the biggest thing, whether I'm at the hospital working with one of my coaches in my personal life, I tell people when we have disagreements or like they get upset, I was like, what reason do I have not to do something to help you or like to work against your interests? I was like, if you're my friend, if you're my client, if you're my patient, I was like, my goal is to help you succeed in whatever aspect you're with, or it's to support you. It's to be there for you. If I make a joke or, if we say something or if we give a piece of advice, it's not to take a dig. It's not to hurt you. It's supposed to be to help you. And they're like, well, I was like, okay, I get. So I think instead of lashing out, I was like, let's come back and let's have a conversation. Because that's a really big thing. A lot of people don't always know how to express their emotions, or they want to feel first, converse later. And I find that so interesting because like before I even get mad at somebody, I have to ask them, hey, like two questions. Hey, is this real? Like, are you joking? Is there actually something happening? Okay, there's something happening. Can you walk me through it? Because I want to understand and I want to solve this because I don't want to be angry or upset. And I don't want to be angry or upset with somebody I'm trying to help or who's supposed to be on my team.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I mean, I don't know that I've always had the nervous system regulation or foresight to be that grounded. Like, I love how grounded you are when you say that, and I can feel your sincerity. And I think that's admirable. I think that's what we should all be working towards, is checking in with the other person first before we get lost in our stories or projections or our emotions and triggers, which might not even be anything about the existing person. We're just feeling that from the past.
I think if we all took the time to be slow to anger, slow to respond, I think there would be less explosive situations. And you might not miss out on a relationship you were destined to be in. Because how many times have you broken up with somebody? Not you. This is for all you bachelorettes and bachelors out there listening. How many times have you broken up with somebody or gotten into a fight over the most genuine misunderstanding, or literally you didn't hear the right thing? Because I was like, that happens. Me and a close friend of mine recently just had a big blow up because she didn't hear the first 33 seconds of the conversation I had, and she just heard the last 10 seconds and just like went ballistic. I was like, you know what? Here, I'm going to give you time and space because I want to keep all my limbs. But then I went back and we talked about it, and she was like, I don't believe you said that. And I was like, I didn't. I was like, here's the part of the conversation that you missed. And she's like, so I've been upset for a week for nothing. And I was like, I guess. But I was like, but I've done the same thing too. I was like, I used my perception and I filtered what I thought was said, or I filled in my own I took your Mad Libs and I tried to put in my own words. Doesn't work. Does not work. But I realized that like just a while ago is, hey, if I actually just would have a conversation like, hey, just what did you say? Or like, what did you mean? Because you could say something and I find it really offensive, but it's not what you meant.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, now it's different if you say, hey, what do you mean? And what they said is what they meant. And you're still upset or offended by it. That could be a proper justification for ending a relationship or now having your emotional moment, you know. But sometimes like I said, we're not the same person. So you need to hear and understand what each other is saying.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about when my husband and I met. He was saying something, I was saying another thing, but I projected my own stuff onto his motivation, right? Like, to be real, when we met, I asked him, I don't know what date it was. I think maybe just our second date. I was like, how do you feel about polyamory? Because I was looking for monogamy, but I lived in Los Angeles at the time and there was a lot of people that were into polyamory. And I was maybe like nervous that that's what he wanted because I felt this connection, but I was afraid of getting hurt. And, I like people can do whatever relationship structure works for them. But he was like, yeah, I might want to do that sometime. I was like, oh, okay. So we had this very long discussion about that because I felt triggered in part because the week before, or maybe even if just a few days before I went on that date with him where I asked him about that, I went out with a guy and he showed up to the date super tired. I'm just going to tell like a bad dating story really quickly. He showed up to
We
the
love
date.
those.
He showed up to the date super tired. And I was like, oh, why are you tired? He's like, oh, I was out late last night and I like stayed over at a girl's house. And I was like, oh, okay. Like who? He's like, Laura. I'm like, oh, like my friend Laura? He's like, yeah, we hooked up last night. And I was like, okay, this is our first date. And that's a little bit weird for me.
There are like so many little things there that I was like, I feel like that would be fair that there's like tension because I was like, wait, so this is our first date. How did you already know my friend? Like, I guess there are so many questions I would have and that we would have to work out. And I'd be like, okay, maybe we don't try this again.
Yes.
Or maybe we just wait a while. And please stop hooking up with my friends. Thanks.
Well, I mean, it's a little weird because it's not like I was dating him. It's not like I had any right to be like, don't hook up with my friends. But it was just like so funny to me that he couldn't show up fully presently for our date because he was
Mm-hmm.
too busy having sex with one of my friends the night
Yeah.
before. And the funny thing is, he did know we were friends because he met us at the same party. Like it was, yeah. Anyway, it was like a whole nother level of crazy. But what came of that as we kept talking is he was like, so my friend Laura is polyamorous. So he was like, well, I just thought because you were friends with her that it would be fine with you if I slept with her and then like was on a date with you the next day and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh, hold up. No, like that's actually not what feels right for me and blah, blah, blah. Because of that experience, that was on my mind when I had the date with my now husband. And after many months of like kind of processing this of like I don't think I'm going to want that ever and him being like, well, I think I might want it at some point, what came up is he was like, my parents got divorced when I was just out of high school and they had totally lost their sexual connection and I would be willing to open a relationship if that meant making my partner happy sexually in order to keep our love strong. So it was like coming from this actually like beautiful place that he's like,
Right.
I want to know that this is a lever I can pull to save the relationship if we both feel like that is what would be helpful. But I'm not like inherently wanting to do that right now. I'm afraid of like losing our sexual connection. And that felt really healing for me because my first marriage was a sexless marriage. We maybe had sex like 5 times in the last, like, we were married 5 years, but in the last 3 or 4 years, we barely had any sex. And even after we got married, we hardly had any. So, my point is, I had all these judgments about him and about like, oh, he just wants to be poly because he wants to be able to be with multiple women and blah blah blah. And it was coming from this beautiful place of not wanting to replicate what his parents had gone.
I think it's so funny that people have this like negative connotation of polyamory, or at least men in polyamory, because most of the poly people I know, or the couples who are in the lifestyle, they all have really beautiful stories and nobody's just in it for the physical. So I think it's always funny because that's always what like a lot of women say, or like people say when I talk about it or when we have that conversation, it's like, oh, they just want to sleep with a lot of people. And I honestly, like off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody I've met in the lifestyle who that's the reason they like try to join the lifestyle. It's usually because they were like, no, I just have robust personality and I have a lot of love to give, or not everybody understands or fills one hat for me. And so I'm glad that you guys were able to go back and revisit that conversation and he was able to tell you that story, because I often say the same thing. And I think more, I'm not going to say more couples should do it because, you know, I shouldn't tell you what to do to live your life. It's your life. But I just think it is a really big opportunity. If we have a great relationship, but the only thing that's missing maybe is intimacy or a new take on it, and this is a way to save it or to like reintroduce a spark, why not? Because I feel like you can't say you tried everything to save your relationship if you didn't try everything. Maybe not going on like a criminal spree, but like, you know, something that like won't hurt anybody or is against the law.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways to do relationship nowadays, and people have to decide what feels right for them. And again, like it's like what is the underlying motivation for these things, and what does a relationship need as it evolves? Early on, we talked about me having a sexless marriage before I met my husband and my first marriage and all of that. We were both really clear, like sex is important to us. Like we really want to have a thriving sex life, even after we have kids, you know, even when we're going through tough times or we're not feeling super connected. And I'm like, wow, I can't imagine not having that conversation and early on in our dating, because it felt like that really shifted everything. It made it safe for us to talk about sex, talk about our desires, talk about our fantasies, talk about our libido, like, and that if we felt like, oh, like I'm wanting something different, I'm wanting something more sexually from each other, that there's like full acceptance to bring that to each other. So it's been fun for me and for both of us to realize, wow, like a few times a year we look at each other and say, that was the best sex we've had. And that's still happening 10 years in, you know? So I think prioritizing intimacy. We've talked about vulnerability on this podcast, but also prioritizing intimacy is really important. And I like that you mentioned earlier the physical is important. You can't just be like, who cares what they look like? Like they have a great heart. No, you have to have some level of pull, but it doesn't need to be the only type of pull. You can have spiritual pull, intellectual pull, emotional pull. I think it's healthy and important to talk about sexual needs and make it like a cornerstone of the relationship.
Listen, we're never mad at a tangent. That's kind of what this show was built off of. So go on in as many as you need. But as you were talking, we've done surprisingly a lot of sex talk. If you could whisper one truth about love into every smart single person's ear tonight, what would it be?
I'm just reflecting for a second. Yeah, I'd say something like, it's time to open your heart and connect with your body and align with what you want and don't give up.
I love that because whether it's your career, your relationship, just life in general, it gets tough. And we all have moments where we're like, I'm tired. I don't want to do this. You know, that meme of, I'm tired, grandpa. Well, it's too damn bad. That is, it's life. You know, it's like you will be tired, but like, don't give up because you never know when you're going to find that beautiful moment, that magical moment where everything could change for the better. And you start living the life that you were destined, fated, designed, wanted to have. Whatever you believe, however you think the universe works. I was like, that it's just one moment away. Maybe not the next moment, but it's just one moment.
Totally.
Well, Violet, as you can see, my dimmers didn't kick on. Normally they do. We've talked so much that, you know, it's changed from afternoon to evening, but it was well worth it because I had a great time today.
I did too. This was so fun. You're a great host, and I loved all the, places we went in the conversation.
Yes. Guys, if you had fun going down this rabbit hole with us, make sure you share this episode with a friend who maybe just needs a new perspective to be open to love. And you're going to follow Violet on all her stuff. You're going to check her out. You're going to set up a one-on-one if you're ready to take that first step. So where can we find you if we want to connect?
My website is violetlange.com, but to be fair, it hasn't been updated in a very long time. So I know this is really old school, but I just want people to reach out to me via email. It's violet@violetlange.com. with questions or curiosities or an introduction, we can email. And if it makes sense to have a conversation, we can, or I can point you in another direction. Or, from time to time, I have like programs that I'm offering, but I don't have anyone right now that is open. So, yeah, just hit me up over email and then we can connect and see if it makes sense to talk about a group program or one-on-one, or me just like tell you keep going and send you a book recommendation.
Listen, you heard it here, guys. If you learned nothing else tonight, like you said, keep going, but also don't be afraid to take that first step, because that has been a big thing that we've been talking about lately. Guys, don't be afraid to take the first step, because who doesn't want to fill out a Mad Lib? Who doesn't want to live their best life? Who doesn't want to be open to finding love? So make sure you save Violet's email. That's going to be down here in the description, and just shoot her a message if you're ready to embrace all the amazing things that life has to offer us. And I will see all you amazing bachelors and bachelorettes and partner people next week for an all new episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. Bye, guys.